Okay, so welcome everyone to today's Translation Manchester Research Network seminar series. I'm Fiona Foster, one of the translational research managers, and I work alongside Alessandro and Li Jing to deliver Translation Manchester. And I'd like to thank Ikra Habib, our admin support officer, who's done a marvelous job setting this up. So the seminar series itself brings together all of the esteemed members of our research network, who all act to help us support moving translation from the lab to a healthcare outcome. All of our partners are highlighted with their very own page in our booklet, which is available to download via the link that will be posted in the chat. Each month, we invite a couple of our partners to come and give a presentation on how they can support translational research at the university. All of these talks are recorded and will be uploaded onto our YouTube channel afterwards as a resource for future use. So before we begin to talk today or hear from our esteemed speakers today, just a couple of housekeeping rules. As you'll notice, everybody is on mute, and we ask that you turn your cameras off. This is one, because the event is being recorded, but also not to distract our speakers. We will take questions via the chat function at the end of each talk. And could you please stay online at the end, as we have a quick poll to get your opinion on how the seminar series is running. So without any further ado, I'm going to hand over to our first set of speakers. We have a dual act today from Autism at Manchester. So I believe I'm handing over to Emma first, and then Peter will be taking over.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Fiona, and thanks for the invite. So I'm going to start off with an example of this postcard here that was from an event we ran a few years ago, where we asked autistic people and practitioners, clinicians, family members to write about their experience of autism. And this particular person said, if you are talking about me and making decisions about my life, make sure you talk to me and ask me what I want and I think and I need. And they addressed that to all teachers and professionals, but really that does apply to us researchers as well. And this gets at the essence of what Autism at Manchester is about. So it's about making sure autistic people are part of the research process. And it's really integral to translational research. Next slide, please. So what is Autism Manchester? We're a group or a network of autistic people, researchers, clinicians and practitioners who come together to create research that has real meaning for autistic people. If you can do the next button, please. The motivation behind forming Autism at Manchester was twofold. So firstly, there were concerns from the autistic community that researchers were not working on issues that were important to them. And also, autism affects so many different aspects of life. So, for example, the usual cognition, the social aspects, but sensory, motor, employment, it involves technology. There's just so many different disciplines that need to come together to work to understand various aspects of autism. So this is another aspect of Autism at Manchester. Next slide, please. And our key aims are to share knowledge and understanding around autism research and collaborate on the selection, design and conduct of research. And we do this through a number of initiatives. So in the middle of the circle on the left, you can see there's different initiatives. So we have a mailing list and newsletters. We have expert advisory groups, which I'll talk about briefly in a moment. We aim to do co-produced research, so that's research between researchers and autistic people. We run events and seminars, and we also produce a series of educational resources. Next slide, please. The key people involved, there's myself, who's the chair, and I also chair the expert by experience group as well. We've got Peter, who you'll be hearing from shortly, who's an autistic adult and CEO of Salford Autism, which is a support group for autistic people run by autistic people, and he's our coordinator. There's also Kathy Ledbetter, who's an autism researcher and our events coordinator. And we've got Eve Edmonds at the moment, who's a psychology intern with us, and she's helping with our communications. So these are the key people, but we also have a steering group that consists of academics, clinicians, autistic people and family members as well. Next slide, please. So how can Autism at Manchester help facilitate the translation of the research that you do? So there's a number of different aspects. So firstly, we can help improve the quality of research and grant successes. So one way of doing this is through our Expert by Experience group. And this consists of autistic people and family members who advise on research in a confidential manner. And this is at face-to-face meetings and also through a listserv group as well. And this really helps to improve research by helping us to avoid inappropriate research questions and the problems of stigmatizing language that can really build distrust between researchers and the autistic community. And Peter's going to be talking a little bit more about this in a moment. The group can help ensure that the priorities of autistic people are met, so that the priorities of researchers and the autistic people can come together to produce more translational research. And the group also helps improve the design and feasibility of your research. So, for example, building trust increases the number of participants who are likely to want to take part in your research. Also, to make sure that when people participate, they're actually interpreting what you want them to do in the way you want them to interpret it and not a different way. Next point, please. Thanks. The other thing we can do is promote your research and help you to be more connected. So we've got a mailing list, various social media outlets. And so through these, you can reach more participants and share your findings with the autistic community as well as other researchers and practitioners. And then through the network and through the steering group, you can find new research partners and help keep informed of what's going on. Next point, please. And then finally, the Autism at Manchester can help with growing your experience. So we have a number of different resources and events. So in terms of resources, we've got a module on participatory research. So that's helping you learn how you can build involvement into your research. Also, another example is one of our PhD students who's autistic has developed some guidance on how to do text-based focus groups. So these are a little bit more inclusive for those people who don't actually want to do or find verbal communication quite difficult. We also run events which you may want to get involved in, so webinars, for example. You may want to deliver your own event. And all these can really increase your confidence in these participatory research practices and improve your science communication skills and consequently really help translate your research. Next point, please. So this bit here is just a reminder, really. So this is from the Translation at Manchester network of their different points in the translational pipeline. And really, you can come to Autism at Manchester at any particular point. So from basic research to the more applied research. But really, the earlier the better. Is more involvement you get, the better your research will be. Okay, so next slide. And I think I'm passing on to Peter now. Yeah.
Apologies, everybody, for the lighting. I'm borrowing somebody else's office. Hi, my name is Peter Baimbridge, and I am as autistic as it gets, but probably not the picture of autism that you might have in your mind. That's because most people don't really know that much about the wider autistic community. In front of you at the moment, you have my thumbnail CV from a previous life. Next. What it doesn't tell you is the mental struggles that I've had throughout my career. Until, hello, at the age of 56, I'm finally diagnosed with autism and everything gets explained. A little bit annoying, but hey ho, life moves on. So I spent my time since then supporting other autistic people with their difficulties with real life experience. And as I checked on my phone the other day, I have personal direct contact with over 1,000 autistic individuals. I think that's pretty unprecedented for most organisations, let alone clinicians, etc. So it means that I can get you out to a lot of people and also get you a lot of different aspects of the autistic community coming back to communicate about whatever it is you wish to talk about. Next. So why is my involvement so crucial for translation? Next. Very simply, if you're not autistic, you really don't get it. When I first joined Autism at Manchester, none of the researchers knew any autistic people outside of the laboratory. That's just not realistic. You need to know more about the subject that you're researching, and we can help you do that. Next. So this is what we're trying to achieve for you. We want to help you to avoid inappropriate research questions. For example, investigating stimming. Stimming is the hand waving, flicking, tapping, whatever else that a lot of autistic people are supposed to do. I don't, but a lot do. And there seems to be this idea that it's something to be discouraged, when in fact stimming is actually an autistic person's way of self-regulating their own stress. And if you stop it, they will get more stressed and therefore appear to become more autistic until they reach a point where you can't communicate with them at all. So really figuring out how to stop this is probably pointless. But if you investigated it and found out how to resolve our need for it, that might be much more useful. There's also a lot of inappropriate stigmatizing language about. And first-person identification is just not acceptable to most of us. We detest being called a person with autism or a person on the spectrum. And there's quite a wide variety of other potholes you can put your foot on that we can help you avoid. And of course, we've got all the inappropriate perceptions about autism, not least of which is that researchers tend to focus on deficits that are supposed to exist within autism. One aspect is the theory about the unusual gait that autistic people have. I'm not completely convinced myself, but rather than trying to fix something, maybe there's something useful we can learn by looking at gait research and maybe use it to decode more about how autistic people work so we can help to integrate them more. The same applies to the double empathy problem. This difficulty in communications both ways to autistic people and non-autistic people. If we learn more, there is an application to come out of this that can make life better for others. And then we've got just the classic inappropriate interpretations of data. In the 1950s and 60s, it was noted that many autistic boys had mothers with a very flat, unemotional presentation. And it was concluded that autism was caused by refrigerator mothers forcing their sons to be autistic. When in fact, what the data was showing them was, hello, an autistic person is likely to have an autistic mother and father, and we're getting blamed for everything all over again. Next. There's also the aspect of how a lot of researchers simply failed the community priorities. As Emma said before, you really should not be doing anything about me without me being involved. And you should be pursuing my prime objective, not what you think I would find useful. So please come to us, ask us. We will tell you what autistic people would like to have and what they're not interested in. And inevitably, this results in the sheer impact you would have on the lives concerned. I tire of reading research papers that are supposed to develop the latest, greatest, whatever it is to help autistic people, and realizing that if these people had but known about the autistic community, they're only helping a very, very tiny fraction of a much greater range of people that could have been helped, but you've missed. Now, inevitably, there are problems around design and feasibility of research because inevitably research into autism is in an area that most people can have no real concept of. There are lots of books and papers to learn, but it's not the same as living it. We can help you with this. And as Emma alluded to earlier, we can help with your recruitment. A lot of autistic people have learned to be highly suspicious of researchers, and for very good reason in the past. We can help guide you as to how not to upset autistic people in the first place, and perhaps to approach them in a way that they would find more acceptable. Moreover, people trust us because they know we work with them. So if we are introducing somebody to potential recruits, they're going to have fewer qualms about what they're being asked to do. Next. Please, we are here to help. Please get in touch. We will talk as long as you need to help you get it right. These are your email addresses. We're on campus. Please contact us.
Thank you so much, Peter and Emma. That was a fantastic talk. It's just a very good example on how patients and researchers can work together to do better and more translatable research. So thank you for sharing that experience. Is there any question from the audience? If so, you can put it in the chat, raise your virtual hand, or just speak up. In the meantime, I have a question for both of you, really. So the expert by experience group that you established is great, is fantastic. And so the best way of accessing it, am I correct in saying that they just need to contact you two in the first instance?
That's right. So either contact myself or Peter, whatever, it will get its way to the relevant person.
Great. And when you show that diagram of our translational pipeline, you say contact us as early as possible. Did you mean as early as possible in the conception of the research idea, before applying for funding? Or does that mean early in the pathway, meaning, when it's not patient-centered research that we're talking about, it doesn't directly involve patients just yet. Is that still okay for you to be contacted?
Yeah, it's a good question. So it's both those points, really. So get in touch and talk when you're coming up with the ideas, but also the group would be very interested in hearing research that is at a much more basic level, even before it goes with people. I think our group would be quite interested in hearing about, from animal research as well.
Well, that's very good. And in terms of I wonder if you also support or provide support for parents with autistic children. Is that something that your expert by experience group does?
Yes, so there's parents on the expert group as well. So they would provide advice from that point of view. So we have different researchers will have different studies, and some of those studies are around children. And some of them are on with adults. So yeah, a whole range.
And in terms of events, and so what's the best way to subscribe to your newsletter to know about your events coming up this year in the future?
Yeah, so again, contact me or Peter and we can put you on the mailing list, but you can also follow on Twitter and Facebook and Instagram as well.
Good, fantastic. Thank you for sharing all of that. If there is no further question from the audience, I'd like to thank Peter and Emma again for coming and sharing that with us today. And moving on to the next speaker of the day, who is Callum from Policy at Manchester, specifically from the team within FBMH. Is that correct, Callum?
Yes, yeah. In a sense, well, I'll go into that.
Fantastic. So Callum is going to tell us a little bit more about Policy at Manchester. Over to you, Callum.
Great. Fantastic. Great. So yes, hi everybody. I'm Callum Wood. I work for Policy at Manchester. As Ali said, we're based in Central Comms, but I work primarily with the Faculty of Biology, Communications and Health. And I'll go a bit more into what our team structure looks like. So a bit about us. So we're, as I say, we're the university's policy outreach and engagement team. What does that mean? So we exists to foster engagement between academics and researchers at the university and policymakers and policy influencers at every level, so local, borough councils, regional organisations like the GMCA, the Greater Manchester Combined Authority, all the way up to national, working with MPs and the national government, and even international as well. So we've done work previously with bodies from the UN, from EU commissions, and from the WHO as well. So we've got lots of different routes that we use to try and drive policy change based on evidence from the university. I'll go into a bit more detail about some of those in a second. So this is where it gets a bit confusing. So as I say, I work primarily with FBMH. We're based in Central Comms, so we're over in the division of oh gosh, what are we now? Communications, marketing, and student recruitment. We went through a few mergers during the pandemic. So our team breakdown: we have our manager, Tanya Graham, and then we also have 3 comms officers, 1 for each faculty, like myself, and then there's my colleagues, Suzanne, who looks after FSE, and Megan works with Faculty of Humanities. We also have 2 officers who work in civic engagement, so that's working with the local councils, the Manchester Borough Councils, as well as the GMCA and the local MPs as well. Our team also has a data analyst who does some fantastic work pulling out and visualizing data for our projects. And we're also a member of CAPE, which is the Capabilities in Academic Policy Engagement, which is a partnership between ourselves, a few other universities, and also a couple of government offices. So the Government Office for Science, Parliamentary Office for Science and Technology, and a few others. We're linked in with those. And through CAPE, we offer policy fellowships and other link-ups between academics and policymakers. So where do we come in the research pipeline? Typically, we come in at the end. So that's not to say that if you contact us early in projects, we can't help. We're always looking to link up academics with policymakers at all levels, but sometimes if you have a policy which has a very clear, if you have a project which has very clear policy aims, we can put you in touch with relevant policymakers and hopefully look at co-developing some of the aims and outcomes from that project. Typically though, yes, we come in after research is finished or research has gone for publication. And our aim is to help disseminate the findings and also tease out the policy asks and the policy recommendations that the evidence is pointing you towards. So everything we do is driven by the evidence and the recommendations that researchers make from that. We work with academics and researchers at all stages of their careers, so everywhere from PhD students up to emeritus professors. We do offer training sessions throughout the year. So I think we held one under my predecessor in the FBMH role, Craig Whittle. He held one with FBMH. And I think it was done with Translation Manchester as well. That was back in November. So the best way to keep in touch with us about our training sessions is to sign up to our newsletter, which you can do on our website. The link is at the top there, and I'll also put it in the chat after this. And you can also sign up to our listserv as well. So that's our internal emailing list, which again goes out and offers training sessions and other information. So, so I said I'd talk a bit about some of the different routes to impact that we have. So one of our main ones is our blog series, which are fairly short by academic standards, 1,000-word pieces, which lay out a bit of a background on a topic, lay out the research that's been done. So one caveat to our engagement is that research must be done wholly or partly at the university. There has to be a link back towards the University of Manchester. So it lays out the research that's been done, and then crucially, the final bit is teasing out what the recommendations are to policymakers based on the findings of the research. We publish these on our website. Again, if you go to our website at the top, you'll find a link to our blog site. And then we publish those, we share them on social media, Twitter, LinkedIn, etc. But then we also do the heavy lifting around the engagements. We'll identify a list of stakeholders. So when I say stakeholders, I mean policymakers and policy influencers. So policy influencers can be charities, think tanks, individuals with quite a high profile on a certain topic, and policymakers can be, as I say, everybody from local councillors to regional, all the way up to MPs, ministers, secretaries of state, and then also civil service teams as well. So the civil service really are the people who do all the legwork behind the scenes to actually make policy work. So we engage with them as well very often. So we're actually feeding into the people that are doing the minutiae of the day-to-day policy engagements. So our blogs are our main vehicle for policy engagement, and I'll give a few examples of our front page of the blog site at the moment. So just to give you an idea of the breadth of research that we cover. So this is a piece that was converted from one of our publications on air quality. This is from a brilliant report called The Child of the North, which is looking at regional health inequalities, as well as educational and economic inequalities. So many university researchers contributed to that, so we're converting their pieces into blogs. This was a response, a rapid response, we turned this around in a day, to the energy security strategy that came from BEIS, which is the Government Department for Business, Energy and Industrial Strategy. They have a target of building 8 new nuclear reactors by 2030. And Francis Livins is the director of the Dalton Nuclear Institute of the university. Was very keen to respond to that, so we did so. This was a piece from David Denning, who works internationally on fungal infections, looking at the need for rapid diagnosis, especially in developing countries where people are often misdiagnosed with tuberculosis when actually they have fungal infections and all of the health problems that come from the wrong treatments. Great piece on basically, can we use robots in nuclear reactors? This was a really interesting piece to work on. That was my colleague Maddie, published that. And then something that I've been working on personally is working with Professor Joe Neal from pharmacology. So Joe is trying to get the law changed around psychedelics. So psychedelic drugs are currently in the highest schedule of the UK's laws. They're in Schedule 1. And for reference, some of the drugs that are in Schedule 2 are things like cocaine, ketamine, and heroin. So in Schedule 2 means they are easier to do research with than psychedelics. This is despite the fact that the overwhelming evidence suggests psychedelics are safe, safe for use in clinical treatment, far less detrimental effects, and also potentially a really powerful cure. And not just a treatment, but a cure for a lot of mental health conditions. So I'm working with Joe at the moment to try and get the law changed. I helped her recently put a submission into a select committee inquiry on drugs. So I'll talk a bit more about that in a while. But just moving on to another route to engagement we have. So if you've come across Policy at Manchester before, you'll probably be familiar with our publication series. So these are collections of academic policy essays around a common theme, and then we publish those both physically and digitally. Very happy to say I'm in the office today, so I was able to pick up a copy of one of our latest publications on cancer. Apologies for Zoom function, the blur function on Zoom isn't helping much, but you can see we get it up into a nice glossy publication, which is completely blurred out, sorry about that. And we publish those, and again, we do the same legwork. So we identify stakeholders, policy influencers and policymakers. We get in touch with them. We say, this is the research that's being presented, these are the recommendations. And we're always driving towards trying to set up sort of one-to-one meetings, roundtables, and really sort of use everything we publish as a springboard to further engagements. And this is our publications page on our website where you can see some of our latest ones. So I said I'd talk a bit about some of the other routes. So I've mentioned select committee inquiries and government consultations. So select committees are bodies of MPs and peers that exist to scrutinise the work of government, and they will very often put out inquiries where they're calling for evidence around a certain topic. So as I say, the Home Affairs Select Committee scrutinises the work of the Home Office. They recently put out or they recently closed an inquiry into drugs, looking at drug laws in the UK and how they're policed, whether there's anything that needs to be changed. So I worked with Jo Neal and 2 other colleagues from the university to submit evidence to that. Really, really pleased to say that Jo has now been called, or she's been asked to give evidence in person to the Select Committee, which is something that can come out of these submissions. So next month, she and I are going to be in London at the Select Committee session where she'll be giving oral evidence on the case for rescheduling psychedelics. Government consultations are a similar animal. So these are when the government is looking to change law or policy on a certain area. They'll put out calls for evidence and also just collecting views and feedback from not just academics, but members of the public as well. We also produce briefing notes. So briefing notes are similar to blogs, but they're more in depth, tend to draw more heavily on the academic literature. And these are essentially looking specifically at one topic and providing all of the background on that. We work in as well, obviously, the relevant evidence from a university on an area, and then the recommendations to policymakers on where to go from there. So we produce these throughout the year. We can also produce them as a bespoke thing. So if an MP or another policymaker gets in touch with us and says, oh, I've come across your work, I'd be interested in finding out more, we'll go back to the academic and we'll produce a briefing note that goes into more detail and pass it on to them. We also hold events at party conference seasons. So we had a large presence, obviously, at the Conservative Party conference last year that was up in Manchester. We ran a few events as well at the Labour Party conference in Brighton. And these fringe events, so they're there for any conference attendees to take part in. So we'll hold panel events and discussions where we'll have academics from the university, a relevant policymaker, and then we also try and get a relevant figure from industry or charity as well, who can just speak a bit more about the kind of practice. You can find recordings of our previous sessions on our website. Apologies, I do keep directing everyone towards our website, but it is all on there. And then outside of party conference season, we also hold panel events and roundtables throughout the year. So these are all the different routes that we have. We're always happy to have conversations with academics and researchers, and really just we'll tailor our approach to your work and the impact that you're seeking to have with it. So we'll suggest the best way of engaging with policymakers and support you throughout that. I think, apologies, that was a bit shorter than Emma and Peter's, but this is, I've mentioned our website very heavily, lots of information is on there. And there's my contact details as well at the bottom. You are very welcome to get in touch with me, whether you're an FBMH researcher or just a researcher at the university, in which case I'll pass you on to my relevant colleagues. Yes, thank you.
Thank you, Callum. That was great. I really like the case studies because it really shows what you do for the researchers to have them affecting policy. If there is any question for Callum, please put that in the chat, raise your virtual hand or just speak up. And I've got a question for you. Maybe it's a bit naive because this is not really my field, but I think there might be a lot of researchers across the university that do research that can affect policy and could have potential for what you do, but they don't know that. So I wonder what's your approach to reach out to those people? How did you get in touch with Jo Neal? Did she get in touch with you? Did you approach her? So what's the process of that? How do you promote policy change within a research project that doesn't know there might be that aspect of research?
That's a great question, and it's one of the barriers that we come up against quite often is people just don't know we exist necessarily. So we're always, so we hold monthly drop-in sessions, myself and the other 2 comms officers for the faculties, which we advertise through the faculty comms teams, where we invite academics to come along and basically discuss their research with us, and we'll sort of point them towards the best routes for impacts, in our opinion. In terms of how I got in touch with Joe, so Joe was working with my predecessor in my role, Craig Whittle. Obviously, Joe has a very clear policy outcome that she wants, which is to have psychedelics rescheduled in the UK's drug laws. It's not always obvious, but I think the best thing we can do is just highlight our availability as a resource that academics can draw upon. And we're always happy to have conversations. And, you know, we'll tell you if we think that maybe there's not a clear route to policy impact. But we're always, basically, we try and raise our profile as much as possible, and just have those conversations, and then we can work out next steps from there.
Thank you, Callum. And in a way that your answer there answer also the question that Colette has asked about how do you determine what project to work on, and can a researcher just self-refer? I think you kind of answered it. Colette, are you happy with that answer? Yeah. Okay. And then there is another question from Emma, actually. Emma is asking, if a researcher writes a blog, do you then try to link them up with policymaker, or does the researcher need to already know the policy pathway?
So no, so we do all of the heavy lifting. As I said, we put together the list of stakeholders, so that can be policymakers and also policy influencers. We'll take your research to them, we'll write an email to them, laying out the main findings and recommendations, and then we'll say, you know, would you like a further conversation? But really, our job is to make the connection and get the ball rolling, and just introduce researchers to policymakers as a source of evidence that they're able to draw on when they're thinking about changing policy or changing the law or changing legislation.
And I'm assuming that you actively help writing that blog piece so that it's effective to speak with policymakers.
Yes, yeah, absolutely, yeah. So we're involved in all of the blogs. We never publish anything without the academics involved being happy with it, but we're always happy to write things from scratch. We understand that academic schedules are busy at the best of times. So at the moment, I'm working on a blog with some people from the Centre for Biological Timing, where they've sent over their research paper, and I'm in the process of writing that up into a blog that I'll then send back to them to have a look at.
Fantastic. So if there is no other question on the audience, actually, I did have another quick one. Where do you get those physical publications that you showed us? Are they distributed across the university, or do you go somewhere and get them?
Good question. Yep. So they're not distributed across the university, but if you drop by, if you're interested in getting your hands on a copy, well, I'd always direct you towards the online versions, because we put a lot of effort into those. We have PDFs, and we have also nice fancy interactive ones with moving content and stuff like that. But primarily we take our publications along with us to party conferences, to roundtables, panel events, etc. that we're hosting, and they're a nice conversation starter. They help just present the research in a visually attractive way, and crucially in a way that's understandable to someone who doesn't have 10 years of experience on a research topic.
Good, fantastic. Thank you so much. Well, I think we can close this event a little bit earlier than normal, but I'd like to take a little bit, 1 minute extra of your time to answer a couple of questions about how we are running these series of events. It should come up on your screen as we speak. So that really helps us identifying how to go forward with this seminar series, really. Then once you complete that survey, I just would like to thank again Emma, Peter, and Callum for coming to present today. We're gathering again next month. I think it's going to be on the 25th of May. The details on that event is going to be circulated with our newsletter, which is going to go out later this week. I'm going to post, well, you can subscribe to our newsletter on our website, and see you all next month. Thanks for coming.